Hello, everyone. So Dr. Nicola Pera, the holistic psychologist here. I have someone awesome, Mr. Justin Sunseri, on here today. You guys might know him from his totally amazing Instagram. Talks about all things polyvagal. So he is Justin LMFT, I believe that's your handle. I will link this all accurately in the notes below this video. But he has an awesome Instagram account and really does share a lot about what we're going to be talking about today, which is polyvagal. So some of you listening might think, what the hell is that? And he's going to tell us all about what the hell it is and why we care, and how to get started using some of the practical approaches in terms of regulating our nervous system. So really cool. He also, Justin, has a really amazing podcast that also talks about all things polyvagal. So he is the polyvagal man. Without further ado, thank you so much, Justin, for having a chat with myself and the community. I think this is going to be invaluable. So welcome.
Thank you. It's my absolute pleasure. Like anything I can do to spread just some basic fundamental knowledge of how we as humans connect, but also how we respond to danger and stress. It seems just knowing these fundamental things has a huge impact on people. So I'm happy to. Mercedes and I spend hours on the podcast talking about this stuff. So I'm absolutely pretty much, I think you could say, obsessed, or I call it hyper focused.
I love it.
I learned about polyvagal theory about a year ago, and I would say almost every day I've spent learning about that or things in that sort of realm. So yeah, this is my absolute passion right now.
I love it. I love it. And you can totally tell. I love how passionate you are and how aware you are of this reality. Because I think a lot of us clinicians, I don't know if you've gotten any of this training in school. I know I didn't. So having come across this and sought this out, I think once you know this, it's hard to unknow it, especially as a clinician. And we are doing the clients that we work with a disservice if we don't understand. So talk to me, what the heck is polyvagal? And you did mention a concept I think that a lot of listeners out there can relate to. You said the word stress and threat and all of that. And I say that because I hear that word a million times over, where a lot of the humans that I'm working with and living with and, experiencing on a daily basis, more often than not, you hear when asked, how are you doing? It's, I'm stressed. So talk to me, how does this connect? And what the heck is this polyvagal?
The polyvagal theory is, so like in school, and I think just people who take learning about trauma seriously, I love how passionate people are about this stuff. We hear that there's a mind-body connection, that trauma lives in the body. We hear about things like flight and fight and like freeze and all these other things. So we hear these pieces of it, but polyvagal theory is really what ties everything together. And it's like in school, we learn about mind-body connection, but no one ever said what that is, at least for my schooling. They never really went into depth. But the polyvagal theory explains that we receive cues from the outside world, but also from the inside world, and that we shift down. It's called the polyvagal ladder. The polyvagal ladder is a representation of the hierarchy of the circuitry in our nervous system. So at the top lives the safe and social engagement system, where you can make eye contact and smile and use vocal prosody, which is like that up and down sing-songy kind of quality, versus a more monotone, like talking like this. And when we shift down the ladder, our first stop is flight mode. And this is like sympathetic arousal, where we have to get away, there's danger. And this is what I love, is that polyvagal theory lays out, and so does Peter Levine in his work, that it's a sequence of events, not a menu of options. And when you call it a menu of options, which I know we do, or not, hopefully not currently, but in school and whatnot, we said, well, this person responded by running away, this person responded by fighting, this person collapsed or froze or did nothing, or what looks like nothing. And there's like an element of blame there, or accusation, or questioning, or judgment. And the polyvagal theory breaks down that it's not, we're choosing, no one's choosing these things, we just do them. So if we can't be safe and social, we drop down into flight behaviors. If that doesn't work, our next stop is fighting. And this is if we perceive that we can run away, or that we can fight. If sometimes, in the presence of like a police officer or a school principal, there's a power differential there. So the perception of being able to run away may not even be there. So we might drop down to the bottom part of the ladder, which is shutdown. And that's where the body goes limp, we collapse, dissociation happens there. And then there's, which I love here, there's Dr. Porges, he's the father of the polyvagal theory, they call him. When I interviewed him, he specifically said that the freeze state and the shutdown state are different things. And even I had made the mistake of confusing the language there. But he broke down that when we shut down, it's more of a collapse kind of thing. And when we freeze, that's really more of a combination of shutdown plus sympathetic arousal. So shutdown plus wanting to fight or run away. And when these two things happen, day to day, it feels like panic. When you panic, like you're supercharged, your mind is going a mile a minute, but your body stops. Like you kind of freeze up, right? This
Mhm.
happens to me on this bridge. There's this bridge that goes to San Francisco, and I panic. I don't do well with heights, but this bridge in particular, it's one lane and it feels like I'm driving into the sky, and I freak out. And so my body, like, it really tenses up. I grab the steering wheel super tight. So panic is really this experience of wanting to shut down, but also being sympathetically charged at the
Mhm.
same time. So that's what the polyvagal theory is. It lays out this is a sequence of events that all human beings, all mammals, that we go through. It's not like we're choosing to do. I don't want to freeze when I go up that bridge. I want to go through it peacefully and enjoy my drive and look out over the water. But my
Yeah.
body, for some reason, even though I know it's safe, I know my car is new enough. It's not going to collapse. Like, it's not going to
Right. Right.
break.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It's solid. It's been there forever. It's going to be good. But my body, for some reason, detects that I'm in mortal danger and it wants to
Right.
shut down.
Yeah. I love that you are pointing that reality out, that this is outside of our conscious control. This is
Yeah.
actually a lower order or a back part, the way I'm often describing it, of our brain, where it does limit choice. And I say that because I do think that sometimes, especially after the fact, when our conscious mind comes back online, if you will, right, we can start to feel maybe shameful about
Yeah.
the reactions that we're seeing ourselves have, or after the fact viewing ourselves retrospectively of having had, in that moment. I think it's really important that you acknowledge, and that the listeners out there hear, that again, this is a nervous system
Yeah.
response. This is
Yeah, exactly.
happening outside of our conscious awareness. And I love what you ended on, is not often touched by logic. We cannot logic our way or
No.
rationalize our way from those responses in that moment, because it's just not as powerful as, like I said,
Like,
that lower order brain. Hmm.
totally. And it can't, it's the brainstem area. It can absolutely help. But just for me personally, like, I knew the bridge was coming. I saw it coming. And I've done this multiple times. Like, I know it's there. I prepare myself. I held my wife's hand, which usually helps me kind of ground. Like, I like physical touch,
Hmm.
and nothing was helping
Yeah.
whatsoever, except for what. Well, the only thing that helped me was just to narrate what was happening out loud. That kind of helped me for some reason. Um, but yeah, it's not like you can just learn. It's not exactly like you can just learn a coping skill and download that, like, coping software and you're good to go.
Uh-huh.
Right? Oh, I've got a new thought technique. Boom, I'm good. Like, it's usually a bit more complex than that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But as I say, there's two steps of change, really putting it simply, and awareness
Yeah,
and action.
totally.
And I think this really does kind of go into that awareness bucket. So if you're out there listening, anyone
Seriously.
out there listening, and you do have a history of those kind of flight, fight, whatever they are, freeze type of behaviors that, maybe at a time did originate. I think this is part of it too. At a time, maybe some of those moments did originate with the big T, the big trauma, right? The big bad thing that happened. Not all the time is that the case, but what more I think becomes the case is that
Right.
becomes then the habitual coping mechanism that then we use over time. So I say that because a lot of us could be seeing those behaviors or those coping, kind of tools, or if you will,
Right.
happening at a time now when they don't really map on to
Yeah. Yeah.
something big and bad and scary that's happening. It's just kind of like a remnant of that nervous
Well,
system activation.
the theory lays out, and again, Peter Levine, to me, these really go hand in hand, that we can get stuck in these modes, or in these, our nervous system, not like we're choosing
Mhm.
to, again, but that our nervous system can actually get stuck there. And it's possible to be stuck there for a long, like, decades.
Yeah, yeah,
People, that's, well, they know. So it's, you can get stuck. That like flight energy, the fight energy can get stuck, especially when you go through what we call more of a freeze response, where you basically are immobilized, or your body shuts down while being extremely fearful. I think is the basic way to put it. That
hmm
that energy can get stuck in your system and really stay there for a long time until you allow that process to complete itself. And Peter Levine he's really the man to go to for that. Irene Line does some really, really good work on that also. But
hmm
that these things can stay within you, and it's absolutely not a choice to keep them there, of course. But it, just learning these things can help. It can help someone become unstuck, and I like to say unstuck and not broken, not
Mhm.
Not exactly like the word we use the word heal, and that does make sense, but really it's you're not broken, you're stuck. This system, nervous system is literally stuck in these defensive states.
Mhm.
But it's also could be, day to day more of a stressful. I like that you said stress because for me, I'm always thinking like danger and whatnot and trauma. But really, if you have a stressful job, what you're receiving from the outside potentially are these cues of danger, we call it, and that might be very very simple things like the background low bass noise of a heater or air conditioner. If you work in a public school system, there's all kinds of noises that you hear: street people yelling, potentially gunshots, depending on where you're at. Like that's
Yeah.
hear those things.
Yeah. Mhm.
The rattle of a air conditioner kicking on, people stomping outside of your door. Like there's all these like deep sounds or shocking sounds that you hear that can send you down the ladder and put you in more of like an anxious place. And day to day, you may not even notice it, but if you grind your teeth, like I do that a lot. If you grind your teeth, or if you like, tap your pen, like your body has this energy and is trying to get it out, but it's not working because you're not mindful. Plus, using the body movements. Does that make sense? So
Mhm.
like it's not good enough to just tap your leg. All that does, it doesn't really discharge the energy.
Mhm.
You have to do is combine that you're mindful of it, and this really comes from like meditation can be a great place to do this, to really be mindful of what you're going through and allow the energy discharge to happen. But it could be literally, in my opinion, anything. An example of my podcast that I talked about was riding my daughter's scooter, which I didn't break, I fit it, and just being mindfully aware of how it felt for me to go faster, to go slower. How does it feel in my hands to like grip the rubber handles? How does it feel to just glide along and make turns, sharp turns, and just to actually experience it, not just do it, but to actually experience it. And it's really like I notice when I do that, my breathing changes, and that tells me that there's something going on in my nervous system that is becoming unstuck or is kind of releasing.
Mhm.
But
So
that can happen day to day,
you're
literally.
yeah, you're really talking about what I talk about a million times over,
Mhm.
which is consciousness. And
Yep,
when I say that, I just mean being present to where
absolutely.
our attention is, with the choice, the best choice, in my opinion,
Yeah,
at least, always being the current moment. So I love that,
yeah,
kind of really practical. So I think what I'm hearing you say is the more we utilize that consciousness and that presence, showing up for whatever is going on. If we're on the scooter and we're going fast or slow, if we're having a nice relaxing sit at a beach or in nature or whatever it is,
exactly.
being fully there, I'm hearing that also does translate to kind of that
Yeah.
nervous system shift that's helpful.
It does. Like it's literally something you can do throughout the day. It's just notice even it's like little increments because looking inward is terrifying for a lot of people. And you
Mhm.
don't have to close your eyes. You don't have to like do your deep breathing. It can be helpful, but if you want to start by just noticing what it feels like to wiggle your toes, start there. And
Mhm.
but you have to actually notice it. You have to like, how does my breathing change? What sensations do I have? What thoughts pop in my mind from simple things? Or if I do control my breathing and extend my exhale, which can be really helpful, like what's that experience like for me? And to be
Mhm.
very curious and not evaluative, not judgmental, because those are cues of danger, but be really curious and like want to learn about what your body is telling you. Like
Yeah.
it's really connecting the body's sensations to the awareness, the mindful awareness of those sensations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that suggestion because when I talk about meditation as like a structured practice a lot, because I think that gives us I call it the arena, to practice that mental exercise of being separate from our thoughts
Yeah,
first and foremost. Because so many of us do believe or are merged with our thinking minds, but
totally.
then it also allows us to practice viewing our thoughts non-judgmentally, and then furthermore to practice moving our attentional focus and bringing it into the current moment. However, I think for a lot of people that can feel overwhelming, the practice of sitting. So my
Absolutely.
second suggestion is, if you are one of those people listening who do feel like that more sitting kind of structured practice of meditation is overwhelming, because to speak to your point that you just made, our internal worlds can be downright distressing at times, often even.
Yeah,
Um, but using those practical ways is definitely a suggestion that I give all of my clients as well. So how can you just go
nice.
build mindful moments? Because something that you also acknowledge, those really do go a long way. And if you just make a habit of checking in with where is my attention and can I put it fully into what I'm doing, whether it's in my body or what's happening in my current moment outside of me. I think that those moments go much longer of a way. So anyone listening,
Totally.
while, meditation is a great structured practice to have, it can allow you to practice, you know, navigating your thoughts differently internally, I think that just as helpful as finding those moments in a given day to do the same.
Yeah, there's things that I draw, and there's things like, sorry, did I skip there?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
All right. There's things like drawing or like art, just some sort of creative outlet. Writing can be so helpful with these things, but the trick is, again, to be mindful. And I used to just draw, but now more when I do draw, now I'm like, well, how does my body feel about what I'm drawing? That's not now, so it's less about what I want it to look like. My body will tell me, like, and I listen to my chest and my belly area especially. It'll tell me, like, move my arm faster. And I know it sounds super weird and abstract, but really it does.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, so I'm supposed to move like this, and to not worry and not evaluate what.
Mm-hmm.
So there you froze.
Hold on, we're frozen. All right, we're back.
Here we go.
All
There we go.
right, we're back.
Hi.
Take two. Perfect. I love that. So you were talking about drawing and
Yeah. So
listening to your body kind of compass cues. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I just listen to how my body feels, and there'll be like a slight. I experience it as a slight little. To me, it feels like a little acid, like in my stomach, like a little, like, I don't know what's the word, like a little pinch, and that tells me, oh, let's do something else. So I just listen to how I feel about my creative outlets, and I follow that, and I feel my breathing change. I feel a release, and that is, I think, kind of like meditative in a way, but it's not like I'm sitting there just going inward. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing something. I'm moving enough, and you know, notice, how does it feel to draw slow, or paint slow, or whatever. How does it feel to move faster? And just notice, like, as I do this, how does my body respond? Music, not just creating music. That's of course awesome, but listening to music I find to be a way for me, because I don't create music and I don't like dancing either. But listening to music I find to be really, like, it releasing in a way. And so if I'm listening to something and I'm noticing that I'm not connecting with it, or I'm not able to, like, focus on it, or especially like a podcast, so I have to ask myself, am I in a place where I just need silence? And so I allow there to be silence. And then I'll notice, as I have silence and I allow myself to kind of get back up to me, that's like kind of like a shutdown sort of place where I just want to, like, be quiet, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to be inward and just kind of be quiet. So once I do that for a little bit, then I'll listen to my body and I'll be like, okay, now I'm ready for some music. And what I'll listen, for me, it's heavy metal. I listen to, like, heavy metal music after that, or something more aggressive. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, again, going up the ladder from shutdown into this sort of aggressive fight mode. I'm not fighting people. I'm just, like, listening
Right.
to
Yeah.
more
Uh-huh.
aggressive. And then from there, I can listen to my body and be like, all right, now I'm ready for something else. And I'll listen to something more like oldies. Etta James is usually my go-to. Just something very peaceful with, like, lots of prosody. And it helps me get out of, like, a funk, like a sort of, like, shutdown, place,
Mm-hmm.
and into this more, safe and social, I'm ready to connect with people sort of place. So music as well can be extremely healing, as long as you're aware of your body sensations
Mm-hmm.
while listening to music. Don't just listen to it out of habit, but, like, how does it feel? What's the experience of this music? What's your body telling you about what you're listening? What is it about that music that appeals to you so much?
Yeah, I
And
love
music is
that.
super easy.
I love those suggestions, Justin, because you're really talking about, for what some of us is rebuilding a connection, first and foremost, to our
Yeah.
body, to, like you
Yeah.
said, back to the suggestion giver. What does it feel like just to be in your body, to wiggle your toes, but then obviously extending that. And then, okay, once I've just grounded myself in my body. And I just want to acknowledge that, because I think a lot of people listening, might be sitting on the far end of disconnect from their body. So the first, I think, step
Totally.
is, let's learn how to reconnect with our body. And then I think we can expand and use our body as a guidance tool, exactly as you are. And, what's making me
Yeah.
feel good? How is this making me feel? And then asking those more exploratory questions and using the feedback that our systems are giving us naturally anyway. So that's the thing. So those of you
Yeah.
listening, if you're not feeling as consistently, at least, connected to your body, it's not that you're your intuition does not exist, or it's not that those signals aren't there. They're there. And I think that's the important reality, is to realize they're still there. They've always been there. They've never went away. We've just become more disconnected, likely because we're more in our thinking mind or more in that shut down place. So I think the first step is to reconnect with the body, so that then over time you can start to hear those cues and see them and use them in these moments. That I love the suggestion you're giving to do. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that you pointed out that you can, or that listeners, like, you can. It's not like it's done. Things aren't broken. You can connect with people. Like, it's still there. You can. It is possible to trust people. They may have been broken, and maybe you are in more of a defensive state. And I don't blame you. I really don't. But it's not like it's lost. The possibility is there, but we need to have safe and social cues from the outside world. And usually that's from other people. We have to have the possibility for safe connection plus safe environments. And the reality is not all of us get those, sadly. But that really is how we work our way up, is by being safe. And that's the heart of therapy, is being in a relationship in a safe environment with a safe person. And that will allow you to feel safer in looking inward, experiencing your body, talking about difficult things. That's really the heart of therapy, is building safety.
Yeah, I agree. Now let me ask you, Justin, are there universal factors to consider when we talk about safety? So the opposite of the threat environment, whether it's external or internal, or do they really individually differ? Is it our task to figure out what it is that safety is for us? Or are there some, like I said, more universal things to consider, again, whether we're talking the external environment or our internal environment?
I think that there are, and not just as human beings, but also just mammals in general. When you hear like a low bass sound, that's a danger cue. But if you hear someone who's using more vocal prosody and they have that sing-songy quality, that is universally a safety cue. If you have a dog, you know that if you have more prosody in your voice, they respond to that differently than if you have more of a, like, shameful sort of, I know you ate the cookie sort of thing.
Yeah. Now, just to confirm for the listeners, prosody is that kind of what, like talking to a baby, that kind of sing-songy?
Yeah, there you go. That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. The things that parents do, and I'm not saying like talk to each other as like you're a baby,
Right. Yeah.
but it's that playful, up and down range. And I think that if you have a more masculine voice, it's a little bit harder to pull that off. But I think I have enough prosody that people can hear that I'm safe. And even like that, when you ask a question, you sort of, like, at the end of the question, you sort of go up, right? Like, you ask a question. So that's the ability to use your voice to express how you feel. And people who are in a flight mode or fight or shutdown, they don't do that. They've lost the capability in that mode to be able to use vocal prosody. They're more likely, if you're in fight mode, you're more likely to use a deep bass tone, and to, like, be more forceful in your language. If you're in flight mode, your voice may pick up in pitch, like you know what I'm talking about, like higher, because you're sort of signaling danger. And if you're shut down, it becomes very quiet, very flat, very kind of numb. So hearing those vocal prosodies, seeing people use their eye crinkles, everything from, like, what's this area, the eyes up, basically above the nose. That area is huge for mammals. You can tell a lot about where someone's at just by the top of their face, basically. So, eye crinkles suggest that I'm listening to you. And if I'm listening to you, that means I'm in a safe state. That means I'm a safe mammal. So that's a universal cue to mammals, or to at least, human beings. I don't know how dogs respond to that. But if I'm not in a good space, my eyes become wider. Like, if I'm in danger mode, or if I hear danger, my eyes go wide, and my whole body freezes. So if I'm able to, rock back and forth, that means I'm safe. If I'm that means, okay, my body's like has this sway. I can hear music. I can, dance. Not that I would, but I could. So I think there's some very universal cues of safety that all of us pick up on.
Right. Yeah.
So it becomes a lot harder.
Right. Well, I'm hearing some of that too is outside of our control, right? So if we're talking to a human on the other end of the conversation, obviously where they are in their state, in their nervous system state, which is going to affect the quality of their speech, is going to be that which we can't control, right? So again, I think it's just being aware then possibly of how we are feeling in response to if we are having to interact with someone. that is in one of those kind of,
Yeah.
lower runged states on the ladder, right? If they're in their own fight, fight, or freeze mode, then just being aware of the effect that's carrying within us. And obviously, if we have a choice to either end the exchange or not, and navigate that person to begin with, obviously that might be the better choice, especially as we're trying to find our own
Yeah.
safe moments and safe people if we are healing.
Absolutely.
So I think that's part of it, is just to be aware of how other people are how are we, put it this way, are reacting to other people.
Absolutely. And if you have some control over who you interact with, and you can, if
Mhm.
someone's not safe for you, it's okay to not interact with them on a day-to-day basis if you can avoid it. But I know people are wondering, or they're going back to the way they grew up, and they're recognizing, my mom or dad or my parent did not provide these safety cues. They were always sort of flat or like disconnected, and they're probably wondering right now, like, well, how did that affect me? And yeah, so that's called co-regulation. Is when you provide these safe and social cues. That's called co-regulation. That you're providing safety, and kids feed off of that and build their ability to be safe co-regulators, but that also builds their ability to self-regulate. And self-regulation is built off of co-regulation. So we do have to have, especially in early childhood, I think is the most important. It's not too late, but we do have to have co-regulators. So people that are in their safe and social state that can provide cues of safety and provide actual safety as well. And a lot of people do not get that when they
Mhm.
when they're grown up.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm really
That's
happy
that's
that
that's
you.
kind of that's the common thread I see with all of my clients, is that there's a lack of healthy co-regulation, healthy attachment that is underlies, I think, every single person I've ever met with. So I
Yeah.
work with mostly kids.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna extend that, Justin, and say that I find similarly too. I think that in some way, shape, or form, we are carrying, whether it's in our nervous system, or but the effects of the lack of that
That's
co-regulation
it.
in our, because we're humans raising humans. I mean, I really just simplify it to that.
Yeah,
It's of no
that's
ill
it.
intent of the caregivers,
No.
and it's often, we cannot, as you'll often hear me say, we can't give someone else, our children included, things that we don't give ourselves. When we have a parent that struggles in their own emotional regulation, then chances are they're not going to be able to meet their child and help their child and co-regulate their child's emotions. So again, of no ill intent, but I think that's a reality. And I am a living, breathing, example of that from my own personal life. So living in just a always on edge, always something was a family motto, really. But
Uh,
that just meant always activated, always stressed, always some sort of nervous system activation going on, which resulted in to a large extent, my parents, my caregivers, being emotionally unavailable to me. So I'm a living example of that dysregulation. So a lot of my own healing journey was doing this deeper level work, and especially someone who had the outward then experience, a symptom, if you will, of anxiety. And my panic attacks, Justin, might as well have been my 20s. I mean, might as well have been one panic attack after another. It was
oh
just a
man.
decade of a nightmare of it, right? So again, I see that as the symptom of this dysregulated nervous system, which I
Yeah,
believe, at least, that I've carried from childhood, like I think a lot of us do. So I wasn't able to
absolutely.
really get a grasp on my own anxiety until not only did I bring my body into physiological balance, because that was driving some of it, but until I understood the role that my nervous system dysregulation was having, that I continue to carry. Now that, I mean, I'm distanced, I'm not in that family environment, but I was still carrying it in that
Yeah.
nervous system activation.
That's exactly the way it goes. And you touched upon, you called them, I think you basically air quoted symptoms, right? That the medical model of looking at these things as illnesses, I don't buy into that. I never have. It never fit for me. And hearing polyvagal theory, it's an issue of being stuck, not being ill, not being defective, not being born defective, not having, in my opinion, a chemical imbalance, because no one's measuring for that anyways. But now it's an issue of being stuck, and now we can connect that to, okay, well, where am I stuck? Where is my body stuck? And usually people will trace it back to childhood, but it could easily happen after childhood as well. Like, where am I stuck? And then the question is, okay, how do I get unstuck? And that's a lot different than saying I have these symptoms, I'm somehow born defective, and then what do I do about that? That's a lot, to me, that's a much different prognosis for when you look at things polyvagally. And Dr. Porter's laid this out. I tried to push him on it, but he laid it out a little bit in my interview with him, that this is an issue of being stuck in a defensive state, and then how do we cope with that? And some people cope with that through drinking. Some people cope with that by throwing desks around the classroom because they cannot handle the state that their nervous system is in, and they're attempting to release the energy somehow, or because they're not getting co-regulation from a safe teacher or a safe parent. So how we deal with these things looks different, and then people like you and I come along and say, well, we'll call it this diagnosis, right? But really, the issue is not the label. Really, the issue is we're stuck in a defensive state, and you're there for a reason. And every time I hear that reason, I go, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And I don't look at someone and say, well, yeah, you're ill. Like, no, that makes complete sense. If I lived your life, I would have the same reaction, because I'm a mammal too. I'm a human being too. Like, it sounds like you didn't get what you needed. I cannot blame you for that. And I also don't blame the parents. I'm glad you said that, because the parents, same, they receive parenting probably in a very similar way, and these things pass on. But saying you're stuck in a defensive state has so much more hope than you're ill, or you're chemically imbalanced, or you have some sort of genes that have been passed on to you that I can't measure for. So to me, this fit perfectly with the way that I view the people I work with, which is you're just stuck. You can do better. I fully believe in you, and there's tons of hope, and it totally makes sense why you're stuck.
I totally agree. And I say similarly, I call everything that I end up working with someone to break an adaptation. I think it was us doing the best that we can at the time, when we were much more limited, in many ways. And again, it just became stored in that subconscious, and there's still a function for it. We just need to teach ourselves and update, all of the other tools that are available. But I think that us humans, mammals are incredibly adaptive creatures. And I think that I love the way that you frame that. So you've already given some really great examples, right? So what if we are someone out there that's in that overactive nervous system, being aware of our cues for safety, I think is what I'm hearing, an overwhelming suggestion, right?
Yep.
Figure your way, find the people, the places that feel safe, connecting with our bodies, right? I think that's something else I heard, using that, kind of mind body connect, using those mindful moments peppered throughout our day, can be really, really helpful to being able to stay grounded and give ourselves a cue of safety. You mentioned something too, it's interesting, because I know I talk about breath work a lot, but you in your description, you said my breath changes. Is that another kind of thing to just kind of navigate and keep in mind as well when we're talking from a polyvagal lens? Or
and Dr. Portis says a lot, and I, of course, we agree. But if you control your breath, that can be healing, like as if you basically extending the exhale. But what I find for myself is that when I listen to a meditation that's describing like how long to hold my breath, or there's something called it's basically breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, breathe out for 8 or something like that. When I do that, that puts me in this state of evaluation, and I'm wondering, am I doing this right? Am I counting right? Should I be saying Mississippi? And so I don't really, that's not super grounding for me, that style. So I find it, just for me personally, I find it more helpful to just be aware of how I'm breathing, and to be aware of what my chest says and what my gut says. That's my navigation, just those two areas for the most part. And from there, when I draw, pretty much when I draw, actually pretty much anything I do, if I'm riding a scooter too, like I listen to those things, I do what those things tell me, and then I notice, oh, I'm breathing easier now. So one way you can do it is by controlling your breath. If that works for you, have at it. But if you're like me and the controlled breath thing is kind of limiting, I like to just listen to how I feel, and then I notice, oh, my breathing changed naturally. And the same thing happens with music, that if I shut off music and I have quiet, my breath will change. Or if I need to come up the ladder into this more aggressive state, which is okay, that's it goes from shutdown to fight to flight to safety. So I recognize I'm going up the ladder, that my breathing will change, and I might need silence right now, and that's fine. And then I notice, oh yeah, I'm breathing differently, I'm thinking differently, I'm ready for music now, I'm ready for more stimulation, I'll listen to some heavy metal, like just the whole sequence I went through. And I noticed that as I do that, my breathing just naturally changes. I will also extend my exhale. I do that in therapy a lot. I'll notice how I'm breathing and really kind of let it out slowly to make sure I'm grounded. So either path I think is totally fine. Or if you have your own technique, that's fine too. There's not just like one path that you have to do. And I think that meditation is fantastic. I've been doing more and more of that just in my own way. But like I said earlier, like that scares the heck out of some people, closing their eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no pressure to like close your eyes and sit in a quiet room. If that's not for you, don't do it. If
Mhm.
you'd rather be active, be active. But well, I think what I'd ask is just be mindful of it and then notice how that affects your breathing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that suggestion because you're also talking on, I think, the individuality of a lot of these
Yeah.
healing journeys for each of us. And I love that too, because I get questions often, what exactly do you do? Or, giving me this idea that there's a
Yeah. Right.
belief universally that there's a formula that applies to everyone. And I don't believe
Right.
either of those things to be the truth.
I
So,
don't think so. I think there's things that can be helpful, but I'm not going to dance. That's not my thing.
yeah,
With my kids, maybe, but I don't dance. That's not going to happen. So it's giving me a prescription to go dance. Like it's not going to happen.
right.
But if you tell me to go draw or paint, I'll do that, and
Yeah,
that'll help out a lot. And I know that
yeah,
works for my body. So this is so individualized that it's I. When people ask, like, how do I climb up the ladder? I'm like, I don't know you. I don't. Well, I can't respond because it's not. I don't do therapy online, but um, or out of my state. But like, I can't just say we'll do this thing.
yeah,
So we have a whole Mercedes and I did a few episodes about our techniques. We had some listener techniques, which was really cool. And there's literally, I think, an unlimited amount of things that you can do, but I don't know the person. And you
yeah,
have to become curious and figure out my body likes this. It doesn't like that. I'll do more of this, less of that. This person feels safe to be around. This person, not so much. Let me reduce this, increase that. So it's like a trial and error kind of thing. And just coming from a place of genuine curiosity and building from there.
yeah. I love that. I love that you keep coming back to that word, that concept of curiosity too.
Yeah.
I think the
Not
more
evaluation.
Yeah, the more that we can look at just us, life, teachers. I mean, you'll hear me say triggers or teachers, things like that. Get curious. Just ask yourself the exploratory questions. And I think the more, and
Yeah.
I weave this in terms of the meditation piece, the more that we can get away from what I think is we've all evolved into the more natural tendency, which is to be evaluative, to judge, to see things very simply in that black and white sense. And I think
Yeah.
when we can break that habit in all ways, and
Yeah.
understand that there is no right wrong, there's no universal, there is just finding your way back into connection with yourself, which I think is also going to apply when you're using this theory, which I think is incredible. And I think
Yeah.
I'm hoping people out there listening, kind of maybe have some understanding that they've gained, or, a practical way to start to employ some of this. But we're talking about, I think, some really pivotal stuff here, Justin, and necessary stuff, because, I think those of you listening are maybe beginning to understand the really impactful role that this nervous system, these fight, flight, or freeze modes, and might even be able to see and observe of themselves now in their daily life, those moments where they are acting from that lower rung of the ladder.
Yeah.
And maybe have, some new language for understanding about what it is and why it is that that's happening. And then I love these suggestions that you just gave of, how to start to evaluate people, environments around this concept of safety, how to build a reconnection back with the self
Yeah.
that does have, I think, as you and I agree, that internal guidance system, that knowing sense that's deeper and that's there and that's speaking. And once we become
Yeah.
more connected, we'll be able to use that as we move ourselves, just to kind of make sure I'm right up the rung into that
Yeah.
social, that connective, that I think, and again, as a mammal, we are very social creatures. So, I think that coming up the ladder is of importance for so many reasons for us
Yeah.
as humans, not only for our survival, but to give us the fulfilling relationships in life, and all of that. I think that comes with that highest rung, which is where we're able to
Everything
interact
does.
with other humans.
Everything does. Yeah. Interaction, safe relationships, fulfilling life, sleep. Being in a safe and social place means you can immobilize, you can lay down and be calm and be okay with that. But people who are down the ladder, laying down, turning the lights off, closing their eyes, they go somewhere else. They go because their body is stuck in this place and they go right there because now all the stimulation's turned off. And now they're left with being immobilized or being still.
Mm-hmm.
And all these thoughts pop into their brain, um, always about the past, of course, or stress about the future, the next day, and what do I have to do at work and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, I'm happy you
it's
pointed that out, because sleep and pre-sleep time for
yeah,
many of the clients that I work with are really problematic. It is where our mind goes off to the races, to one of those two areas, back past or future, in a really unhelpful way. And I'm really glad that you pointed that out, that too is a function of this nervous system response that is as crazy as this might sound, like, oh, my bedroom's unsafe, but it is the darkness, the silence, the
Yeah,
stop
all cues of,
can
yeah,
still be, because I think sometimes too, these cues of safety aren't, or of threat aren't always as apparent from the
no,
surface. I mean, you
no,
think
they're
something
not.
like bed, your bedroom might be the most lush, safe looking place, but like you're saying, there's something underlying that your nervous system is being cued on, that it's
Yeah,
responding to, and it's not seeing the lush pillows and the oasis that you've maybe
yeah,
created. It's responding, like you're saying, to the dark or the laying or the silence or whatever it is that comes along with it. So I think
yeah,
that's something else important to highlight too, that again,
totally.
another way we're not as logical, because our nervous system is detecting sometimes things that are not visual to us or not as apparent for what they
Oh yeah.
mean to us.
We're existing in these states throughout the day of being down the ladder in a more stressed out or panicky or shut down place, and we cope with those by watching TV, maybe drinking, maybe positive ways by socializing with people. So we cope with these in different ways, right? But then at the end of the day, we shut those ways off, and we're left with we're left with the stuff that we were coping with, and it hasn't healed, it hasn't gotten unstuck, it hasn't progressed, it's still there. So the issue is becoming unstuck, not just dealing with stuff, not just coping, but actually becoming unstuck and moving up into your safe and social place. And once you do that, you'll be able to lay down and go to sleep uh, with
Yeah.
probably little problem.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you for this whole conversation, Justin. I
Yeah,
think this is going to be really helpful for people out there
hope
listening.
so.
And I am going to link everything about you in the notes down below so that everyone can check you out. And I definitely suggest everyone listening visit his Instagram. He's on there just as frequently as I am, and is always sharing really helpful knowledge. And I think his podcast is pretty badass too. So all of
Thank
that
you.
you can find, and you will be able to find below. And thank you for taking the time to chat. I super appreciate it, Justin. Thank you. And
I
keep spreading
appreciate.
this out to the world, because I think this is incredibly
Oh,
necessary.
love
And I
it.
think all clinicians are going to need to become first in this. So thank you for
That's
showing the
that's
way.
that's totally a goal of mine. And just thank you again. You've given me a couple shout outs, and so many people have come over and they say Dr. Nicole sent me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm definitely taking that seriously. Okay. Like there's so much, I think, buy-in from your community, and there's so much community,
Yeah.
and they take it really seriously. So I'm like, oh, I'm not going to mess around with this. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, I love it. And
Thank you.
I mean, I have to, and I will keep shouting you out, because like I said, this is pivotal information. And I know many innumerable people in my community are struggling in these deeper
Yeah.
ways. So I want them to have their hands on some of these, not only the information, but the tools to start to use, because without that, I don't think that we're all going to be fully able to heal. So thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
taking the time, and
You're welcome.
thank you so much.